Nanda, sir. And we will leave the stage for Professor Sachidanand Mohanty, sir, to take things forward. Professor Sachidanand Mohanty is a leading academician, former Vice Chancellor, Professor, working for government, academia, policy making, having his footprint in literature, history, and English language. And this session is in able hands to take it forward. Over to Professor Sachi, sir.
We request the panelists to please come up on the stage, and we request everybody in the audience to please be seated. May we please have the panelists on stage? Navetej Sarna, Abhay K, Hindol Sengputa, Rakshananda Jalil, Dr. S.K. Nanda, Durga Panda. We request Professor Mohanty to take things forward from here. Thank you so much, sir.
Good morning and welcome to the inaugural session. It is perhaps apt that we are commencing the inaugural session with the festival theme, India and the World. We have our acclaimed panel with us today, and I would like to ask a few foundational questions to them. We have roughly 45 minutes. I would request each of the acclaimed panelists to take about 3 to 4 minutes each round, and as far as possible, refer to each other so that we have a structured conversation. A few words will be useful to contextualize the discussion here. First, beginning with the 60s of the last century, the Canadian media theorist Marshall McLuhan had coined this term global village, which gained increasing currency
G20. The fact is that the world is in a very difficult place, and you did mention that in your opening remarks. We are very difficult in the geopolitical sense, because added to US-China rivalry, added to the problems of the pandemic, is, of course, for the last 1 year, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, with its own implications of a food and fuel crisis for the world, a debt crisis for the world, and the fourth aspect is climate-related challenges. Now, all this is coming together, all this is happening, and what this is doing is it's actually dividing the world again. The multilateral institutions are becoming dysfunctional. So to respond to these global challenges, you need collective action, and G20 is perhaps the best functioning platform of countries coming together, critical countries coming together with 85% of the global GDP and 75% of the global trade, 2/3 of the global population. So it is a significant platform which will have to come to. And I think it is India, being the president, is in a unique position. It's an opportunity. It's not easy. It's not easy. But it's an opportunity to infuse our ideas into the G20 framework and to take advantage of the fact that India is in a good position in economic terms. India is being called the third largest economy. It's going to be in 2027 or 2028. India is a huge market. India is a home of, it's done very well in digital infrastructure. And there are, of course, challenges, both, within ourselves, in our economy, how to actually make this a reality. There are challenges in how to engage with each one of our partners. But let me say that at this unique moment, we are well placed to put our stamp on G20. So I'll leave it at that, and I can come back to details if you've done a round, because there are a lot of other participants who should be given a word. Thank you.
Thank you, Navjitji. I will indeed return to the more critical kind of an introspection that I will urge upon all the panel to really do, because the state-centric approach is, of course, very much there and quite prominently too. Now I'll turn my attention to Mr. Nanda. Mr. S.K. Nanda, you've been a member of the administrative service, but happily you're no longer part of the IAS now, you're superannuated. May I ask you, point blank, as to what, according to you, are the important factors which are impeding the growth story in India?
In fact, KLF or any other literary festival is a very good platform for where the academic excellence and the free mind will be at play, because this is an area which we must all express ourselves full of confidence and with a full of alertness. Now, to the question that has been posed of today by the panel, by the anchor, in my view, India has lagged behind in R&D, research and development, in a very big way in the last 15 years. The research and development may not be always in the field of infrastructure, may not be always in the field of IT or artificial or digital world. Whatever R&D is happening is by the same Indians abroad. Same Indians here, they are a blank space. So something has to be done to see that the digitalization of the world, which India is sharing a big percentage of it in terms of brain power, mind power, is not happening in India. That is one. Number two, see, we are in a habit of inviting a lot of foreign universities and foreign panelists to be a part of the academic exchanges program. I personally don't ascribe to this view, because we are sufficient enough to have our cadre grown, provided we do capacity building. Our capacity building in terms of personnel, postings, right amount of motivation, right people to be put in the right places is probably lacking in the HRD policy. And that HRD policy is giving a big impediment ultimately to the growth story, because any growth story in material world cannot take place until the mental landscape or the mind world or the initial years of grooming is not taken care of. If I am not a good school student, I cannot be a good research scholar in anywhere in the world. Let me be very frank about it. And that grounding is not being done very solidly. And coming to the primary and the secondary education, I would hold the same opinion that somehow or the other, due to some policies wrongly or rightly being taken, the secondary education is at stake, and the right amount of incentives which are being should be given is not being given, except for few pioneering institutions, but with very costly to the people. So the education is becoming quite divisive in the sense, those who can afford, they can go to the best schools, best colleges, best academic institutions, and those who cannot afford, they are left at the mercy. I would compare the days of ours when in the government schools we passed out, we could beat any students at the all India level, and we have been able to be successful. So I think basically, we look too much to others, but we are not looking at ourselves to improve our systems. Because we have got Bhaskaracharyas in 11th century AD. We have got Srinivasacharya in 13th century AD. We have started calculus, trigonometry, biometrics, everything started with India. Zero was a part of India. You tell me what is not a part of India? The alternative medical science is also part of India. We need not always believe in the Western medical sciences to be a cure and sure system for India. And in fact, when India is now having the G20 presidency, I'm not taking G20 is a very big deal, but it is giving a very big platform for India to influence the land map and the landscape of the whole world, to adapt and to follow up and to see the beauties of our alternative health science, which would not allow you to fall sick and not spend money on the health insurance policies of the government.
Thank you, Mr. Nanda, for your clarion call for an intellectual resurgence for the development of scientific and intellectual manpower. Now I turn my attention to Durga Prasad Panda. Durga Prasad Panda, you have been an eminent poet. And despite the disclaimer, you also ideally fit in here. You know, poets have been traditionally banished. Poet was banished in Plato's ideal republic. Can you tell us what is it that India is lacking today, maybe from your own point of view, and briefly?
You are right, sir. I'm a poet. I'm not much into the intricacies of diplomacy and international relationship. Yeah, that I'll be doing. I think the whole problem boils down to the concepts of self and the other. And the present world is much more connected than ever before, and therefore more complex and more chaotic. It needs more intimate and involved engagements with the rest of the world. And due to this connectedness, we naturally have more knowledge and information about the other. But the irony is that more knowledge and information about the other is not leading us to a better and intimate understanding of the other. I firmly believe that the texture of any relationship between human beings and nations is governed by our collective imagination of the other. Now, the pertinent question is, how do we think of the other? Someone had once asked Raman Maharshi that how should we behave with the other? Raman Maharshi responded, there is absolutely no other. Other is just the extension of the self. It is here that the role of art, literature is significant. Art, literature, music, films alter and shape our imagination of the other, and thus define our relationship with the rest of the world. you will see that the only people who are very, very friendly across the borders of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and other countries are poets, artists, writers, singers, musicians, filmmakers, because creativity transcends borders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Panda. Your suggestion about devising a new relationship of the dialogic kind between the self and the other, and invoking Raman Maharshi and others is most welcome. Mr. Hindol Sengputa, you've been a published author. Could you tell us what, in your opinion, India should be doing to have a greater participation effectively at the international level?
So India is at an inflection point, and I think that is not well understood. India will pivot into a new era of, itself in the world, so to speak, based on a whole bunch of criteria. Some of them are economic, some of them are military, some go, deeper into its own sort of imagination of the self. Now, the more prosaic reasons are very clear. India is a $3 trillion economy today. India will soon become a $5 trillion economy. Its per capita income is about $3,000 today, roughly $2,500 to $3,000. It will most likely become about $6,000 to $7,000 in the near future. India, in our lifetime, in our collective lifetime, will become, in all probability, one of the 3 largest economies in the world. All of this is undoubtedly true. India is also going through an internal change. That internal change is driven, I believe, in the way that infrastructure, physical infrastructure once drove internal change in India. And I'm talking, of course, of the telecom revolution, including the STD booth phenomena, and of course, Atal Bihari Vajpayee's golden quadrilateral. India today is going through a digital transformation. That digital transformation is creating, as me and many others have been writing in different papers, is creating a digital citizen. That digital citizen really seeks a greater participation, a greater voice in the democratic processes of governance, and every government that comes to power needs and must deliver more efficient governance at the grassroots level. So today we have, in every election from 2014 onwards, more people have voted in India than ever before. 2014 was a historic election. A huge number of people, largest ever, voted in an election. 2019 was the same, and I dare say the next election, the upcoming election, will be the same. More and more Indians are voting than ever before. Not just that, more and more Indian women are voting than ever before. The economists Shamika Ravi and others call this a silent revolution. This is the silent revolution of more and more women voting at every phase of Indian elections, whether it's at the sort of, grassroots institutions level, or at the state level, or at the national level, is transforming our democracy. So India is going through an external change and an internal change. Also, I think technology will be a driver of India's change. India produces, India exports. In many senses, our import bill is being financed by our software exports. India today exports more technology than Saudi Arabia exports oil. Now, all of this, in sheer volume terms, gives us an indication of how India is changing in the world. Also, India's, there's been a lot of talk about whether India has an independent voice. Minister Jaishankar often says India indeed should be and should take a side, and that's India's own side, so to speak. Now, this has been represented as a new version of non-alignment. Only this time, I believe, our non-alignment is different and qualitatively different, because clearly the state or the country that Jawaharlal Nehru led during the non-alignment, the first era of non-alignment, isn't quite the same country that Narendra Modi leads. So qualitatively, in real terms, economic terms, and in power terms, this is a different country. And our reasons for, in a sense, not allying overtly are different. India is what would be called a rising power. Will India become a great power? Well, we will find out. But it is certainly a rising power. One interesting thing, and I want to conclude by saying this, recently Ashley Tellis in an interview mentioned that India's elite is unique in one interesting way. India's elite in many other countries, when an elite thinks about its own country, it always says that if the opportunities were right, our country should become a great power. There is no debate about that. India is unique in the sense that India's elite is often divided and sometimes very, very fiercely divided on the subject on whether India should become a great power or not. This division does great harm to us and has done great harm to us. Hopefully this division will at some point, be eradicated, and there will be greater consensus among India's elite that India has a manifest destiny and that destiny ought to be fulfilled. I certainly hope that in my generation, that consensus emerges and India's destiny is fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just kind of a caveat here, very briefly, because we will definitely turn as a student of cultural studies. One can't just avoid international relations in today's world. But the whole notion of manifest destiny and exceptionalism that comes, I think it also comes with a certain degree of baggage. And it is to see, beginning with the city on the hill in America, etc. And we know about the trajectory that the United States followed. But this is not to really discount the importance of India, rising India. We will return to that foreign policy aspect. And the vindication of the non-aligned movement is very welcome. Now, Abhay, your name is Abhay, the fearless one. You've been a diplomat. I would ask you to be undiplomatic now. Can you tell us what exactly, in your opinion, is ailing India and how best India can overcome those kinds of bottlenecks to participate effectively at the global level?
That's better. You can hear me.
That's a request from the audience to see you. Please come. Or move the dais. One of the things. Yes, please come. We will ensure that not only the audio, but also visually, we are all present before you. Abhayji, please tell us, undiplomatically, what according to you are the bottlenecks and how we can overcome them to participate more effectively.
Well, I don't see any bottlenecks, first of all. I see that we are moving from strength to strength. We are the world's largest democracy. And we are also as Hindol was saying that, using those words like manifest destiny and all that. But I think India is already was a cultural superpower and is a cultural superpower. And currently I have had this opportunity to go across the country as never before. And India's cultural diversity is mind-boggling. I have never seen anything like this all across the planet. You can put together the rest of the world, and India's cultural diversity is so much more than that. So that I see as, as a great strength, which we need to bring more prominently. And during G20, we have been able to do that, and in some measure. So that's my. I come from Nanda in Bihar, and my father was a teacher. My first. I became a diplomat, and I credit this to India's democracy and India's educational institutions, which could make a person like me, give opportunity to me to become a diplomat and to serve India. So I think, this is an example itself of social mobility, of economic mobility. And not only that, in my memoir, or my first book, River Valley, which is called River Valley to Silicon Valley, I tell this story of how this transformation happened, and see India going from strength to strength.
Thank you, Abhayji. Your notion of the India's growth story, which is a continuous one, and which stems, as you said, from Nalanda, which is, of course, right now leading universities in Southeast Asia and South Asia, is welcome. But I will challenge you. Let me go back to a kind of a bottleneck that you have. A disquieting feature, this is not to take away India's growth story. It's there for all of us to see. But let me tell you about something else, which is very disquieting, not only in the country, but abroad. That has been the increasing emergence of oligarchies and power hegemony, not only here, but throughout the world. And it's been rightly stated that it's not the states and the governments which are ruling, but powerful oligarchies. Indeed, culture itself is also a handmaiden of those oligarchies and international capitalism. What would you say to that? Let's begin with you. What would you say to that?
Well, I'm not saying that we live in an ideal world. Nobody lives in an ideal world. And I mean, I do not agree with you on the culture being, handmaiden of oligarchies. I think as I see today, if you go all across India, you see culture is with the people. I mean, you have these artists who are hardly paid anything, but they are the preservers of culture, whether it is in Rann of Kutch or in the Havelock Island or in now called Susma Swaraj Island, and or maybe in Imphal or in Mahabalipuram. I see all these, the India's greatest strength lies with its people, the common people, the people in the street. And I mean, of course, there are trends which are not very favorable, but it's happening all across the world,
Okay.
and it's not like particularly an Indian problem. So so I would say that I mean, there are always two ways of looking at life, and I look at the positive side.
Fair enough, fair enough. Navjot ji, what is your take on the asymmetry of the globalized culture in terms of inequality, in terms of the globalized culture, which is also manifest in India?
When you say globalized culture, you mean culture as we know it or the culture of globalization? I'm not clear.
I mean the global modern, which seems to make an impact on many countries, including India itself.
Like?
The multinational capitalism, the multinational industry, the multinational pharmaceutical industry, and the rest are making a huge impact on countries like us.
It's a fact. And there is a point of either you deny the fact or you dismiss the fact, but the fact doesn't get dismissed, the fact. We have to deal with it. There has been a corporatization of the world. It's not a secret. Socialism as we know it, or as we thought we knew it, the public control and dominance of high assets is a thing of the past. So today we are living in a world which is run by corporates. You have the big tech companies whose true value is more than several countries. So, if you take the value of Apple, you take the value of Facebook and compare it to even GDPs of Hungary and Poland and other countries, you would be surprised. So we have to deal with this world. The fact is that you have to consistently be looking for equity in inequity. You have to find little islands of equity. You have to push for equity, whether in the old days it was simply, between poor and rich. Today you have inequities in so many things. You have, for instance, digital inequity. That is why, we have just had a virtual summit of 120 countries of the global south. Because India feels at this stage, and this is again what Hindol mentioned about non-alignment, but today, India is looking to see if it can reflect the voice of the global south. Because what is happening today? The problems of the world today are not created by the global south, but they are impacting the global south. So whether you can find the concerns of the global south and not have a confrontational position with the global north, like we used to have. That was a different world, I agree. That was a world of the Cold War. That was a world which was divided vertically and horizontally. But today, India is in a good position that we have very good relationship with the developed world. Yet, we are now seeking to also re-establish our credentials with the global south and act as a bridge, not in a confrontational manner, but as a bridge. And that is one way of looking at solving these inequities. Not the only way, because these inequities exist everywhere. They exist in your health structure, for instance. You saw what happened in the pandemic. I mean, we can all look back and say, yes, pandemic is over, we all did very well. But did we? I mean, what happened? You saw vaccine apartheid. You saw countries which were having 3 doses and storing enough for twice their population, hoarding vaccine. And there were countries in Africa which did not even get 1 dose. So, these are concerns. This is the real world. And I think we are trying to find bits, ways and means. Everybody tries it. And I think this Global South is a good initiative. And let us see if we can reflect some of these concerns to the developed world.
Navjatji, that was very well put, I must say. The whole notion of engaging with the global north from the point of view of the dispossessed, not in a confrontational sense, but in a meaningful sense, so that we also safeguard our own interests. Very well put. Thank you very much. Mr. Nanda, what do you have to say about the rising oligarchies in the world? And how do we in India, safeguard ourselves against those hegemons and oligarchies, power and financial oligarchies, which are being manifested again and again, which really threaten the sovereignty and independence of the citizenry?
So the neoliberalism which has erupted in the last 20-25 years is absolutely dangerous in the sense that without striking terror at your border, without sending missiles in your home, it can bring economic dependence to you to the extent of penury and poverty. By controlling the markets, irrespective of what you are and how you are placed. And that will be able to give you a great divide between the population. We talk of political democracy where we talk of equality, we talk of equity, we talk of participation. But I still remember that there was a famous constitutional panelist who says that it is like a top, democracy is like a top dressing on a soil which is essentially undemocratic. The undemocraticness of the soil is consisting in the caste loyalties, to go up. So that much of productivity is lost to the nation in terms whether of calculation or non-calculation. And that is the reason why we are not able to have the right kind of thing. And second thing, this imperialism growth or neoliberalism, in the name of neoliberalism, people who control the political system through the money power. They are the people who get the maximum dividends in the market. They are the people who get the maximum orders and the market-driven things. And that is affecting also the system of education and health. If you remember a few years before, education and state health were absolutely the domain of the governments of the state. State was responsible for any adult citizen to become healthy citizen. Now the state is not at all in the, because we are following the Western model of privatizing the universities, privatizing the health system. Okay, it's good for higher scale of learning. But for the fundamental backbone, I think we cannot escape the responsibility, and we cannot leave it to the hordes of these people who are having the wealth creators of the world to manage it out of charity. No lunch is free, and no charity begins with them. So charity has to begin with our elected people whom we elect democratically, in whom we repose confidence. They are liable to us, they are answerable to us, they are the people who are representing us, but it is not happening the same way. So there is a disequilibrium between the political system and also the economic system of governance, leading to the fact that we are completely getting into a divisible and world, and the multiplication of wealth is taking place. But this multiplication is taking place at the cost of dividing the population more and more.
So your suggestion that the withdrawal of the state from the medical and from the education itself may not be a good idea. It's very well taken. Now we have two more, and then we have about 10 minutes, and we must not abuse the hospitality of the hosts. So very quickly, just give up the notes that you have prepared. Just tell us, in brief, about the powerful oligarchies that are ruling the roost today. What do you think a conscientious individual can do?
Let's accept the fact, let's face the facts, that truly corporations are ruling the world. Corporations are ruling the world. There is a book also by David Cotton. The title of the book is Corporations Rule the World. It's a bitter truth. It may sound extreme. What we see, everything is managed. It is managed.
Hindol ji, what's your take?
I think, that big corporations exist and that they manipulate the world is not new. It's perhaps more prevalent today than ever before. But, we are in India, we used to be ruled by a corporation called the East India Company. That was another age of the great global corporation too. My point is I disagree with our poet friend. At least in India, I think democracy is getting deeper and democracy is getting wider. Many more people who in the earlier age would not have a democratic voice have been given a democratic voice because a whole bunch of things, including welfare, technology, education, and access to, mediums through which they can channelize their voice has reached them. So I'm very optimistic about Indian democracy. I think Indian democracy is, in a sense, never been stronger, and it will only grow stronger by the day. As far as the world is concerned, well, we fight the battles that of our age. So if we have to fight battles where there are corporations, we should have some great corporations of our own to fight that battle. My final point has something to do with what Mr. Sarna said about India becoming the voice of the global south. This is particularly important because, to answer your earlier question, the rise of any country, and indeed today India's rise, is always compared with China. Oh, well, when India becomes much stronger, it will become another China. But that's not necessarily true. Why do we always hold that must be true? India might rise in a different way. Please remember, India is rising not by saying we'll be wolf warriors. India is rising by saying Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We might have a different model. We shouldn't assume, but there shouldn't be a lazy assumption that necessarily our rise will be exclusive, it will exclude people, it will be competitive, it will give rise to tensions. That may not be true. India may have a different model, and we certainly should strive to ensure that it does have a different model.
Let me tell you how gratifying it has been for me as the anchor and the moderator to find a panel. Yes, I'm going to turn to him. And how exemplary it has been for each one of you to be focused in your own response and the varieties of responses that have been generated here. Now, before we end, and I think we should end before the reminder comes to us from the hosts, my last question is turned to the two diplomats in the panel itself. And I want to ask these two eminent diplomats that of late, the dominant trend in our own country with regard to foreign policy is that we must safeguard our own interest. My question to both of you is that, I'm reminded of Comedians by Graham Greene, which is about the diplomat who is caught in the war of Papaduk Duvalier in the Caribbean. I'm sure both of you have read the Comedians by Graham Greene, or the honorary consul in Ecuador, for example, the dilemma which is faced by the diplomat. I want to ask both of you, what do you have to say about this whole notion that India has to safeguard its own interest? What then happens to the ethical dimension of the foreign policy goals? Yes, Abhay and Navetej.
I just wanted to add what Hindol was saying, that, 2 days ago, there was a conference of India and Latin America in New Delhi. And one of the distinguished delegates, Jorge Jaime, who was Chile's ambassador to India long time ago and is a professor at Boston University, he had just written a new book. And he said in his remarks that India is the capital, New Delhi is the capital of the global South. And, it struck me as a kind of something fresh. So it shows the attention I think India is paying to the global South, and as Ambassador Sarna said, as a bridge between the North and South. And I also want to add to what Hindol said that, I have been telling you that I'm an example of India's democracy. So, my father was a teacher in a primary school in Nanda, and I could not only become a diplomat, but I was also, I could also become an ambassador at the age of 38. And it could not have been possible without India's democracy and this the value placed on the merit and not on any other considerations.
Navetej, have you ever faced this dilemma which is faced by the protagonist of Graham Greene in The Comedians?
Fortunately, no. And fortunately, in the honorary consul, is the poor. The honorary consul is the one who gets kidnapped, so he doesn't have much agency left after that. If he's either drunk or he's kidnapped. So between the two things. But let me get back to your question, which you asked about national interest. I think every country, from the time of the states, from Athens and Sparta till today, and even before, has always guarded its own national interest. So this is not a new development that we should take care of our national interest. What you're noticing possibly is a difference in tone. There's a difference in tone of being putting national interest out there, putting real politics out there. And that, again, I would say, if you see around the globe, that is happening. It's happening in China. It's happening in the US, Make America Great Again. It's happening in other places. So I don't see that as a it's a change of stance, it's a change of nuance, it's a change of tone. It's not a fundamental change. Again, I think having said that doesn't mean that you become unethical in your democracy, in your diplomacy. You've seen what we've tried to do in Vaccine Maitri. You've seen what we've tried to do in helping out countries in disaster situations. You've seen latest what's been done in Turkey. That also has a national interest angle. Plus, it serves your ethical image, but it has a national interest angle that you're trying to help Turkey, with whom traditionally we have not had very good relations, in its hour of need. So I think I don't think this is a fundamental change. It's a question of tone. So I leave it at that. I know that we run out of time. So thank you.
Yes, as I said, we must not be interrupted by the organizers. We must finish in time. Just one line. Yes, of course, there is so much to say. A life is short. And there is no, please. I think we have to really follow the protocol. And to all my other panelists also who are eager to say, and I do suggest that let us really continue this over tea or coffee break. I'll just take half a minute to round up, because I think it will be incomplete. I think the audience would have noticed the kind of a role which I played, and advisedly, as a kind of a devil's advocate, because that is absolutely indispensable and sine qua non for generating an intellectual discussion of the kind which is seen in India International Center. To my great satisfaction, I find, and I would give the full credit to the panel here for generating such a fine discussion, which is original and independent mind. And I think I would like to congratulate the panel and the organizers for inviting me to conduct this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here with us, sir. Thank you so much for an insightful session. I'd request you to please take your...
Just a minute. Just one question.
Before we move forward, we have a felicitation for Mr. Hindol Sengputa, and we would request the dignitaries on stage to kindly felicitate Mr. Hindol Sengputa. Can we please have a big round of applause? Thank you so much for being here for the insightful session. Sir, just 1 minute. Thank you so much, sir. We'll now move forward to our next and the much awaited session. We'll have a book discussion on the Tome of Sand. Tome of Sand is the English translation of Ret Samadhi, which is an important point to always consider and remember. I think I've been saying Tome of Sand, and I'd like to apologize for that. It's Ret Samadhi. We'll have with us the author, of course, Gitanjali Shri, and the session will be moderated by Satish Padmanabhan. Before, I'd like to call them up on stage and give a little insight about them as I move forward. Yeah, while they are arranging the seats, I'll just quickly tell you that Gitanjali Shri, she's an Indian novelist, as we all know, and a short story writer as well. Ret Samadhi, that we again all know, and we also saw it in the inaugural session. It had won the International Booker Prize in 2022, the English translation of it, of course. She is also author of other novels and several story collections, and her work has been translated into English, French, German, Serbian, and Korean as well. Our moderator, Satish Padmanabhan, is the managing editor of Outlook magazine, with over 25 years of work in various media, newspapers like magazines, TV, and digital. He started with Sunday and Business World, and then he moved to TV with TV18 and CNBC, and later as the news editor at NDTV. He has also taught journalism at the Times School of Journalism and several other institutes. And again, he has several other interests, so we'd like to hear from the two. Can we please have them on stage? With a big round of applause, please. I'd request the audience members to settle down, please. If you are standing, just take seat. The stage is all yours. Hello? Hello? Yeah.
Hello.